phones that notifies you in case of rocket attack or missile attack or drone attack. The sirens sounded. Apparently there are now drones above Kyiv, so it's been calm so far, but we'll see how the night progresses.
On February 24, 2022, the world awoke to Russian tanks rolling across the Ukrainian border at the behest of Vladimir Putin, the first major land invasion in Europe since World War II in 1945. Putin euphemistically called it the special military operation. He claimed it was necessary to protect people in eastern Ukraine from the abuse and genocide of the Kyiv regime. Through all the Soviet-style doublespeak, what Putin's invasion really signaled was the fulfillment of his messianic ambitions for a resurgent Russian empire.
Russia cannot feel safe, develop, and exist with a constant threat emanating from the territory of modern Ukraine, he said, describing the government in Kiev as a junta of neo-Nazis determined to build nuclear weapons.
His justifications were couched in a bunch of false premises, fighting a non-existent Nazi regime in Kyiv, countering NATO's expansion, and defending Russian-speaking people in the Donbass. In reality, Putin's rhetoric has translated into indiscriminate drone and missile attacks, the flight of millions of civilians from their homes, and a brutal expansionist war, which rages on today without relent. In response to Russia's attack, Ukraine mobilized in self-defense and thus began a brutal war affecting millions. Residents of western Ukraine, such as Lviv, which is just 40 miles from the Polish border, have endured air raids, like when missiles hit their city in March 2022. Indiscriminate missiles have also hollowed out buildings in the middle of Kyiv, far from the southeastern battlefields closer to the Russian border. In the capital's residential districts, bombed out apartments and offices remain half standing, a tragic testament to Russia's disregard for civilian life.
Why do they keep targeting this area?
To be honest, it could be two reasons. First of all, the Russians are not so accurate. So they could target in somewhere, and the rocket can pull down here.
Right.
Second one, they maybe decide that it's something here. Or third reason, they just try to scare the people. You never know what tomorrow it will be, your house or neighbor's house. I mean, the more punching point of view that it's unlogical. So you couldn't be sure that if you are living in safe zone of city, you are really in safe.
However, critical infrastructure in Kyiv has also been successfully targeted. In one early attack, Russian missiles struck Kyiv's main TV and radio transmission tower, knocking offline and killing 5 people. The primary mode of communication across the country was temporarily silenced by the blast, and Moscow demonstrated its willingness to target the heart of Ukrainian civic life in order to spark disorder and fear.
You see the black parts of these metal things on the first station. You see it? So the rocket flew like this and fell here and exploded, so killed 6 people and 1 family.
Wow.
Beyond the physical destruction caused by Russia's offensive, the human toll of this war has been immeasurable. It seems as though every single family has been touched by tragedy. For instance, one of our local guys in Kyiv recounted to me what those harrowing first days of the invasion were like, and she shared that her own husband is missing in action from the front lines.
What was it like in the city the first months of the invasion?
I spent here 2 weeks, and then husband actually was fighting in Bakhmut, close to Bakhmut, and he got caught. I don't know. Maybe he was catched, or maybe, but he didn't. I don't know from 2022 where.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Bakhmut is for me personal storage also.
Men across Ukraine, regardless of profession, find themselves suddenly subject to mobilization. It means that people who yesterday were lawyers, shopkeepers, cab drivers could be soldiers tomorrow. That's the level of national sacrifice taking place in Ukraine right now. It's a testament to the Ukrainian people's resilience and patriotism. But how can the war come to an end? The Ukrainians, we know what they want. They want to retain their independence. But what does Vladimir Putin want? Publicly, the Kremlin's demands have included Ukrainian neutrality, meaning no NATO membership, the demilitarization of Ukraine, and Russian sovereignty over Crimea and the Donbass. In effect, Ukraine's partial dismemberment and total surrender. But there's something deeper going on here. Putin also views the West as irredeemably decadent and fundamentally bent on containing the aspirations of the Russian people. So, in November 2024, he gave a speech at the Validai Club in Moscow.
The threat is the imposal and becoming of ideologies totalitarian there since a norm. And that's what we see in the Western liberalism that has degenerated into, I believe, in extreme intolerance and aggression towards any alternative, towards any sovereign and independent thought. And today, it justifies neo-Nazism, terrorism, racism, and even mass genocide of civilian population.
We will protect ourselves and our citizens. Let no one labor under any illusion to that end. But of course, this is not the end of Russia's world role, dramatic as it may sound, but Russia's very existence is the guarantee that the world is going to preserve its diverse colors, stability, and complexity. This is also a safeguard of successful development.
So what does this have to do with Ukraine? Well, Putin sees Ukraine as a tool of the West. Putin said in the same speech at Validai just last year, actually, today they've been using Ukraine and its people as a tool by cynically pitching them against Russians and turning them into cannon fodder, all while parroting about European choice. But what does Putin mean? Where does his philosophy come from? Enter Alexander Dugin, a Russian political theorist often dubbed Putin's brain or Putin's Rasputin for his direct reflection and invocation of Putin's ideology. Granted, Dugin doesn't hold an official post in the Kremlin, but his ideas have been extremely influential in Russian nationalist circles. According to Dugin, Russia must be an empire with global aspirations. The status of regional power, according to Dugin, denies Russia its true aspirations. So, how does Russia restore its empire? First, says Dugin, it must maintain and expand its borders. Dugin argues, remember, this is all the way back in 1997, this is almost 3 decades ago. Ukraine as a state has no geopolitical sense. It has no special cultural heritage, no geographical uniqueness, no ethnic exclusiveness. The historical meaning of Ukraine is reflected in its very name, Ukraine, i.e. outskirts, border territories. If you're a homeowner, you do need to listen to this. In today's AI and cyber world, scammers are stealing home titles. Your equity is the target. Here's how it works. Criminals forge your signature on one document, use a fake notary stamp, pay a small fee with your county, and then just like that, your home title can be transferred out of your name. And they take out loans using your equity, or they even sell your property. You won't even know it's happened until you get a collection or foreclosure notice. So when is the last time you checked on your home title? If your answer is you never have done that, well, you probably should. And that's why I've partnered with Home Title Lock today. You can find out if you are already a victim. Many people at the Daily Wire, including people on this very team, trust Home Title Lock to protect what is likely one of their biggest assets. And at a time when the economy is sort of, up and down and all around, your home is a massive asset. You don't want anybody stealing the value in it. Use my promo code Shapiro at HometitleLock.com. You'll get a free title history report and a free trial of their $1 million triple lock protection. That's 24/7 monitoring of your title, urgent alerts to any changes. If fraud does happen, they'll spend up to $1 million to fix it. Don't be a victim. Protect your equity today. Go to HometitleLock.com. Use promo code Shapiro. That's HometitleLock.com. Promo code Shapiro. He says the existence of Ukraine and its current borders and with current status of a sovereign state is tantamount to a monstrous blow to Russia's geopolitical security, tantamount to an invasion of its territory. The continued existence of a unitary Ukraine is unacceptable. Now that sounds exactly like Vladimir Putin last year. Exactly like it, right? Ukraine is a threat by the very virtue of existing. Ukraine, says Vladimir Putin, has been weaponized by the West against Russia. They were saying this back in 1997, long before Euromaidan, that the East should be turned into a puppet regime. And that's exactly what's been done in the Donbass. He said that Crimea should be run by Moscow. That's exactly what's happening now. Central Ukraine, he was hoping, would gradually be turned into a puppet regime. The West would essentially be incorporated into Alexander Dugin's fantasy, German-led unified pro-Russian Europe. This is one of his theories, that eventually Europe would unify under a sort of Russia-friendly Germany and thus extend Russia's strategic frontier, according to him, at least to the western extremity of Central Europe and at best all the way across the Atlantic. The new Russian empire, Dugin makes clear, is fundamentally opposed to the United States. He calls the United States the common enemy. The antidote, unsurprisingly, to the evils of the West is a resurgent Eurasian empire with Russia at the helm, hence Vladimir Putin's desire for territorial expansion. There's no question that Dugin is an enemy of the United States. He openly says as much.
It is not democracy, it's already totalitarianism, and now we are not about defense of the individual freedom, but about prescription to be woke, to be modern, to be progressive. It is not your right to be or not to be progressive. It is your duty to be progressive, to follow this agenda. So you are free to be left liberal. You are no more is free enough to be right liberal. You should be left liberal, and that is a kind of duty. It is prescription. So liberalism fought during its history against any kind of prescription, and now it, at its turn, became totalitarian, prescriptive, not free as it was.
That's why he also likes the American isolationist wing. Why? Well, because if the United States retreats from the world stage or disengages from defending Europe, it directly advances Russia's vision of a multipolar world. Dugin has noted that America's neo-isolationist approach implicitly normalizes the idea that every great power should mind its own sphere of influence. Another sign of this includes Putin's foreign minister showing up to the recent summit in Alaska wearing a USSR-crested sweatshirt, a not-so-subtle nod to the Kremlin's imperial nostalgia. Which isn't surprising, as we've seen Putin famously considers the fall of the USSR to be a geopolitical disaster, minimizing Russia's influence on the world. This brings us back to the current moment, the Alaska summit, and what might come next. The Trump-Putin meeting in Anchorage was extraordinary just for the sheer fact that it even happened. It culminated months of diplomatic wrangling, with Trump eager to broker a deal to end Europe's bloodiest conflict since World War II. Trump had entered office vowing to end the war quickly, and initially he blamed the lack of peace on others, painting Biden, European leaders, Zelensky as the big obstacles. But as Putin's bombardment of Ukrainian cities continued unabated, President Trump began directing more criticism at Putin and set an ultimatum for Russia to show seriousness about a ceasefire by early August or face harsher American sanctions. President Trump, for his part, has been in a very delicate position. He'd like a headline-worthy deal, but he's also under pressure to not sell out Ukraine, and he doesn't want to sell out Ukraine because both U.S. lawmakers and NATO allies don't want that either. In the post-summit news conference in Anchorage, the two leaders gave very little detail, but Trump's remarks were telling. He praised Putin's negotiating as very tough but very smart, and he spoke optimistically about a ceasefire, but he didn't announce one. Reading between the lines, it seems that no firm peace deal has been reached, and unsurprisingly, Putin is still not compromising. President Trump is not pushing Ukraine into an unacceptable deal. So where does that leave us? Fighting continues in Ukraine. Russia still launches nightly drone and missile strikes on Ukrainian cities. Ukrainian forces are still pressing a slow counteroffensive in the south and in the east. As it stands, the war will rage on. Millions have been displaced. Hundreds of thousands are dead or wounded. Entire cities are destroyed. Ukraine is fighting not just for territory, but for the right to exist as a sovereign nation. Putin's so-called peace deal is not really a deal. He wants conquest, seeking piecemeal absorption backed by that messianic crusade that views the West as the enemy. Alexander Dugin, Sergei Lavrov, Putin himself, all sing the same tune, seeking a world where the liberties of the West shrink and brute authoritarianism rises. Touring Kyiv today gives you a true appreciation for the Ukrainian people after undergoing decades of brutality from the Soviet regime, and now several wars in the span of just a few years at the hands of the Soviet regime's heirs in Vladimir Putin. These are people who are standing up for their independence. These are people who want to maintain their own sovereignty. We are very lucky. We live in a country where we don't have to worry about those things. Ukraine does, and that's why Ukraine will continue fighting even in the face of an overarching enemy.